Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to reInvent. So today we're going to talk about some of the problems that supply chain practitioners face, that is getting your product on time to your customers across the country. And with Moderna, they have a special problem. They're in the business of saving lives. So getting vaccines across the entire country on time before it expires, having the right stock at the right time saves lives. And so this is serious business. But before we get into how that works, I'd like to introduce Mr. Tommy Jiang, who's the VP of Data Science and Robotics from Moderna. He's accompanied by Hardik, who works in his team. And we have Jill Hayes, who's a colleague of mine from AWS, who'll kick us off with a story.
So at the very beginning, when the vaccines were launching, they had to do a mass distribution across the United States. And I don't know if anybody remembers, but when you lived in a more rural area, vaccines were a little easier to get. However, when you lived in a more populated area, you would have to start doing a search. And my parents really wanted the vaccine. So I started to do a search, and I found a way to make a reservation 2 hours away. So twice, I drove with my mom and dad 2 hours away to get them vaccinated, which sounds awesome, but as we're driving, imagine this conversation. Hey, Jilly, I thought you were in supply chain. Why are we driving 2 hours away? Why couldn't you fix this? Why can't you fix this? But it was complex, and the supply chains were doing everything they could to distribute as possible. So not only did I hear that once, I heard it 4 times because it was on the way there and back each time. So today we're going to talk about how we fixed it.
Thank you, Jill. So the Moderna transformation was quite, transformational. They actually achieved their objectives of getting vaccines there on time. So we're going to have them talk about that. Before that, I'd like to introduce AWS Supply Chain, which is a SaaS-based solution that is purpose-built to mitigate risk on your companies, as well as reduce cost. And then Jill is going to finish the story by talking about the day in the life of a future planner. AWS Supply Chain was launched in 2022 at reInvent. And so we've spent the last 2 years learning a lot, working hard on the products that need to be created as well as improved. And I think we've come a long way in what AWS Supply Chain was intended to be, which was a SaaS application that mitigates risk, lowers costs, with a unified database with ML-powered insights and built-in contextual collaboration. And the important aspect that you have to remember is the AWS supply chain can be implemented without large upfront costs, without a large contract, and upfront licensing fees. So very, very key to remember. This picture gives you a sense of all of the products that are there. The important thing to see is that we connect to multiple ERPs, and supply chain systems to create a unified data model. The unified data model is key to our product structure, and all of our products work on top of that. So this gives us a lot of benefits, and we'll see that as we go along. You are able to make decisions across multiple systems. We're also able to implement AWS supply chain without disrupting your existing operations. So, and of course, demand planning is pretty typically the first thing that people start with, not always. So the accurate forecast is highly critical to an organization. And we have used our 25 plus years of experience in Amazon to bring all of that into our demand planning product. And that effort continues. So planners are able to use all of the machine learning to eliminate manual effort and create a forecast, as well as make modifications if needed before publishing it to the supply plan. The supply plan, of course, creates your inventory plan that decides where and when and how much inventory needs to be placed around your sphere of operations. Quite a few products out there, but the thing that excites me the most is Amazon Q. Amazon Q is a Gen AI assistant. That is going to look at your organizational data you can make queries, get insights into what your data is doing, take actions based on it. Amazon Q for supply chain looks at your supply chain data, nothing else. And this is available today. So you can actually start using that readily. While supply chain planning is something that we continue to talk about just because it's very challenging, in all aspects of supply chain management, for some reason, the planning problem hasn't been completely solved yet. There's still a lot of work to be done. And it's good to understand what the challenges are. Volatility is a big part of that. And volatility is something that Moderna had to deal with during their planning as well. And we can look at how that was impacted. Demands can change because the customer would like to change them. External factors could impact it. And you could offer promotions. All of that needs to be considered while doing that. Not a lot of people look at how supply planning volatility is impacted. Supply planning can also be volatile. A lot depends on how your suppliers supply on time or not on time, what lead times they follow. And very often we tend to use a single value for lead time. That's not necessarily accurate. It might be varying over a period of time. And if you consider that, your planning is going to be a lot more accurate. In terms of end-to-end and data integration challenges, we have addressed that fairly effectively, both from the point of view of being able to collect data from multiple systems, as well as having an AI-enabled data mapping system that allows you to do that fairly quickly. One of the things that not often talked about is empowering talent. As the new generation comes into the talent pool, not a lot of people of the new generation might want to go through the current processes that are fairly manual and difficult to use. So we have to look at how to make things more simple, leverage technology where it matters, and attract new talent, as well as supplement them where needed. So Moderna used supply planning to do rapid replenishment. So as you can see, the risks they faced were lot expiry. They could not just ship as much as they wanted to the pharmacies, and they had 13,000 of them. They had population shifts. So in the rural areas, they had more vaccines initially, whereas in the areas where it was highly populated, they had less vaccines. You could face the same problem with your products, and so those have to be addressed as well. Last but not the least is hands off the wheel. You cannot be tweaking and working on your products constantly. You cannot be changing things constantly. You need to have a system that learns from what you do and adjusts itself accordingly. So the AWS supply chain planning draws upon all the expertise that we've built over the years in operations and applies it to the replenishment planning system. So we've created fairly sophisticated supply planning models that can accurately predict how much inventory needs to be held and where. So Moderna leveraged all of our supply planning features and replenishment planning, and we did build a couple of unique features for them for inventory policy implementation, as well as lot expiry. So they can actually track when the lot is going to expire before doing the planning. While going through all of the details and complexities of planning, the team from AWS supply chain pays a lot of attention to explainability. Explainability is what makes it look simple, even though what you're doing in the background could be termed as complex, right? So there's a lot of effort. We spend a lot of time and energy looking at how easy is this from the perspective of the planner. Can they look at the output in a tabular form or the graph and say, maybe there's a problem here? What you see in the shaded area is your on-hand, and you see the various lines. I think it's too small, but you see the pattern of demand and supply, and you see that it's hugging the line at the target very closely. Is that a problem? Probably is. If there's a spike or any external influence that comes in, could be weather, could be transportation, that's going to be an issue. So that kind of signal, it should be easy to read from the diagram itself. And that's very key for all of the design we do at AWS Supply Chain. And that has been a useful thing for the products that we make. So what Moderna did was a transformation. It was not just a software implementation. You see the diagram on the left was how their supply chain was before they started. And after they transformed, and our AWS supply chain replenishment planning was one of the components of what they used. They launched what is called their decision support system, which was fairly groundbreaking. And they addressed the pharmaceutical supply chain across all of their 13,000 pharmacies across the country and made sure that they could get the vaccines there on time and in the right quantity. It wasn't something that you could just ship just because you had a lot of vaccines, because they do expire and they do become useless. And if you don't have it at the right place at the right time, the customer is not necessarily going to be unhappy, but they're going to be impacted health-wise. So it was very critical that this needed to be done in the right way. The solution addresses 4 key issues. One of them was, how many things should we stock? When should we arrange shipments? How much will we distribute? And what is the shelf life? So any planning system needed to take all of those into account before figuring out what needs to be done, right? Not a simple problem. And of course, at the end of the day, you do have to measure success, and Moderna measured success by these 4 factors, among other things. Order to delivery time, from the time an order was placed to when we can deliver it to the customer. In-stock rates, you needed to have stock, sufficient stock so you could manage the volatility. You cannot have overstock, which was the other extreme. You can't just stuff your supply chain and pharmacies with vaccines because they expire. So overstock reduction was very key. And order fill rate. As you can imagine, with so many pharmacies around, you had a fairly large number of orders coming in, and the fill rate needed to be high as well. And what we'd like to do now is ask Tommy to come over and tell us how exactly that happened and what components were in play.
Thanks. Hey, first, I'm really honored to be here. So re:Invent is actually the place that really is a cool place for the people using the technology to solve most complex problems. Shri, my coworker, has been here 8 times now, right? Anybody can beat that? No, I think Shri has been one of the most productive engineers in my group. The reason I think I know now, she always attends AWS re:Invent. So we are here to talk about the solution we are doing that Hardik and I will give the presentation. What we talk about is not only about how we solve problem, it's actually how we leverage technology, transform our operation, and make our supply chain meet the customer demand. And today's presentation, we actually will start is we talk about the Moderna mission and uniqueness about Moderna supply chain as well as our business. Then Hardik will deep dive on our technical solution. So our technical solution, actually 2 main parts of our technical solution. First one is we called mData, which is a data platform powered by AWS technology. Second one, we call it Operation Control Tower, is also leverage Amazon AWS supply chain solution. So today, any presentation, we cannot end without talking about generative AI. So I will talk about generative AI at the end of our presentation. Okay, so let's jump in. So Moderna's mission is we would like to use mRNA technology to deliver the greatest impact to the people. So really appreciate that you talk about your story, that your parents actually take Moderna vaccine. So they have been really avoid a lot of hassle on this thing. So it's great that your parents actually take vaccine. If anybody, you haven't taken vaccine yet, I recommend you take it because this season we actually developed a new vaccine to address the new variant.
And now we don't have to drive 2 hours each way.
Great, that's the reason we are here, right? So if you look at our journey in the last 10 years, it's a remarkable journey. So we have been grow ourselves into over 6,000 people across 21 locations. And within 10 years, actually we deliver billions vaccine across globe. How we achieve it is actually some story probably has not really talked a whole lot. How long you can imagine that when we first time design our vaccine, you can now imagine it's only 2 days. The reason we can do it 2 days is because the vaccine was not using traditional way to develop. It's actually designed using AWS technology. We actually calculated. Even today, we do not have a physical virus in our lab because the only thing we need to understand is the sequence of the virus, then we can design our medicine. And it takes us less than 1 year to actually get authorization. So if you look at more information about our technology, it's actually amazing that it's not on the slides, but we can talk about is that our medicine, starting from the research candidate to phase 3 approval, our successful rate is 42%. Industry, 6%. So that's the power of our science platform, also power of AWS. But that is not the end of our story. So when we finish the design of vaccine, we still need to deliver the vaccine safely to the patient. So patient is at the center stage, everything we are doing in Moderna. In order for us to be able to actually get the vaccine safely to the patient's hands, we actually need a very adaptive, efficient, powerful supply chain. And that one requires a lot of digital platform to make it happen. So if you look at our supply chain, even though maybe a little bit unique, but a lot of things probably common to any supply chain professional is we need a cold chain temperature control. So if you think about our vaccine, it has to be delivered through the temperature-controlled device. And we need to have end-to-end traceability. We really need to understand how our vaccine, from manufacturer to distributor, to the carrier, to the airplane, to the pharmacy, how this process will handle. We also need to have really high on-time delivery. So it is important for us if you're a patient, you show up in a pharmacy, you want to take vaccine. The worst thing is you came up, there's no vaccine available for you. So that is always for us is have higher SLA and on-time delivery. Another challenge on the other side of the coin is our product is seasonal. Every season we have to design our COVID vaccine address the latest variant of that virus. Actually this year, we take almost the last minute to finish it is because we want to address the most popular variant instead of the variants that's in last year. And it also have a short shelf life. So we cannot just stock the inventory as the supply chain team talk about this. We cannot do that because then you will have a lot of cost to your supply chain. Then financially it doesn't make sense for us. How we do this thing with all this challenge? It's magic, right? So I will hand over to Hardik, who will talk about the solution.
Thank you, Tommy. So I'll now talk about what we built, how we built, and in the time frame that we had to build this. So we had a big challenge back in January this year that we had to get the platform and solution ready before the season starts. So as you know, the COVID vaccine was launched this year on August 26th. So we needed to get it ready before August. The platform should be up and running, and it should be able to generate some actionable insights. So first of all, we have mData platform, as Tommy mentioned, which is built on AWS foundation, which is center to all of our data needs and requirements. We started with identifying what data we can use from external sources and from internal sources that can generate some meaningful insights for us. Because our products are perishable, they are seasonal. So we need to have a very robust week-over-week demand in order for us to plan our supply chain. So we started with diverse data sources. We started with Google Trends, which is a data that gives us an indication of the market, that what is the demand of certain market based on certain keyword indexes. So we use that data from external sources, we stream that data into mData platform, so that gives us week-over-week indication of how the market is going to move for vaccines. We looked at our logistics providers, which is UPS primarily here, and we got all our data stream for shipments, sales, orders, backlog into this platform so that we can also use that data. We also got data from our customers, and we also have had data stream from customers to combine with all the data sources that we had. We also got data from, so if some of you from life sciences, you know the industry works in a way that we have lots of wholesalers. So we have wholesalers like Cencora, AmerisourceBergen, McKesson, Cardinal, which kind of generates the 80 or 90% of the business in the US. That's how the industry works. So we also got the data from those sources in order for us to generate some actionable insights. Then we also got data from IQVIA. So IQVIA, if you are from life sciences, you would know that that provides us the details week after week on how many products are being consumed in the US. If you are from other industry, there could be some other sources which can give you this indication. We also got data from CDC, which is Center for Disease Control, which gives us information about wastewater data. It tells us the hospitalization rates, how bad currently the disease is. And then we also got data from IoT provider. So our shipments are all cold chain. So we need to track temperature, pressure, geolocation, so that we can make sure that our products are reaching our customers on time and in a good condition. We didn't have this last year. So this was brand new. We built all of this, and based on this, we built 3 capabilities which is driven by technology. The first one is demand and forecasting. All this data combined together run machine learning algorithms. These machine learning algorithms are trained every single week based on this data, and it provides us the week after week national demand, the demand at the state level, the demand at the zip code level, and demand for one of our customers. So we worked with a customer to find the demand for their each stores in the US week after week. What this provides us is gives us an indication that what our product demand is going to be for next few weeks and for rest of the season. So traditionally, the demand and forecasting is done based on either financial targets or sales targets, which we do have, but in addition to that, we want it to be realistic. So these market trends gives us indication week after week that are we really on target and are we really going to achieve our target for sales. This demand and forecasting algorithm, the data that it generates, is then sent to AWS supply chain planning platform. As Paul mentioned before, it has a predefined data model. So we run multiple pipelines that generates the data which can then be sent to AWS supply chain platform. We worked with AWS experts to co-innovate some of the features, like finding the replenishment quantity, the risk of stock out at our customer sites, and identifying the exact quantities week after week that our customers will need in order to remain properly stocked. The way vaccine market works, if you go to a pharmacy store and if you don't find the vaccine, there are high chances that people may not come back because sometimes that's not a priority. So having stock also helps to address the disease, but it also helps the customer. The supply chain planning platform, the insights that it generates, it also built on top of Gen AI, which Tommy will cover in more detail. We also use this data from AWS platform to build logistics control tower. So all the data that we have for IoT, all our shipments, we track our shipments in real time on temperature, pressure, as well as geolocations. We have found multiple occasions where our products had either temperature deviation or it had a wrong zip code or a wrong address. The insight helped us to intercept and expedite the deliveries for customers. Some of these customers were first-time customers ordering through our direct channels. This helped us to provide the vaccine on time and in a good shape to those customers, which provided a good customer experience. So this is what we built. Now how we built it, so this is the overall architecture. What you see on the left side is the diverse set of data sources, which then we created these data streams using various technologies from AWS, especially AWS Glue, and some of the other mechanisms like scraping and stitching, etc. Once the data lands into our platform, we run a data preparation pipeline in order for us, this data to be sent to demand planning and forecasting, as well as AWS supply chain planning platform. Once the data are ready, these platforms can consume them, and then it can run the algorithms which are defined for our unique needs. As we mentioned before, when we started with AWS supply chain planning platform journey, some of the features we needed weren't there, but we worked with them to build those. This output of these platforms can then be used in a solution that can provide the decision support for executives to decide on the vaccine demand as well as inventory replenishment. This is the logistics control tower, which helps us determine in real time where our vaccines are and what conditions they are in. It provides us information on temperature, pressure, as I mentioned, but then we also combine that with different metadata and different data sets. So we have data from shipments, our orders, and also the logistics provider tracking numbers. So we combine all this data in order for us to get the comprehensive detail on every single shipment. We also got weather data. We now have weather data, which also is sent to this control tower, which then provides us 14 days advance shipment plan. So for every single zip code in the US, it tells us what are the good days to ship and what are the days where we should not be shipping. Because our products are temperature controlled, they are sent in the cooler, and there is a time span where it can stand. So in order to avoid any kind of disruption, we use that to plan our supply chain. All these data streams that we talked about are built for these technologies, capabilities that I referred to. But then on top of that, we also have built Gen AI capabilities, which Tommy will provide more details on.
Wow, what an achievement. So how long you actually did this project?
So we did this in 4 months. We started in
Amazing,
January
right?
conceiving.
Yes. Let's give a round of applause. Great achievement. So with this solution now, we can really enhance our supply chain efficiency and also make sure that our leadership team, our supply chain management team, they have direct visibility of our operation. This is actually unlock a huge opportunity for us to build more capability. Anybody who involved in supply chain, you probably know that supply chain data source is so heterogeneous, came from all different parties. However, your leadership won't stop asking you questions. So how many of you receive email from a chief supply chain officer say, did I get shipment to my customer yesterday? Or how much inventory I have on my retail location? Now, all those problems is they don't send email to me anymore because we give them a generative AI built agent. They can actually type an English question, and we can generate a pretty complex SQL query and being able to get answer back to them. Not 100% accurate, but very close to give them a really good answer for them to really make the next level of decision. And for us in the field of data science and in the field of supply chain, I think this is the best time for us. So generative AI agent actually empower the user, say, okay, they can ask complex questions, and our access to the data, our access to the data model, to be able to actually make a data-driven decision and really improve your supply chain. So next time you talk to your supply chain officer, supply chain is no longer a cost center. Supply chain should be a free cash flow generator because all the data science optimization you guys have done. Since this, let's talk about how your parents doing their vaccine.
Thank you, Tommy. It's a lot funnier if you know my dad when you hear about him riding around in the car with me saying, aren't you supply chain? Can't you fix this? But the reality is that we are all super proud that we have fixed it. And as we start to move forward, we think about what does that also mean for the future? What's next? And let's think about the supply chain planning teams as well. How do we improve their lives? And what does that mean? So Paul here, this is one of my favorite quotes to show when we're talking about the life of the planner and what's happening. Because if you are a planner in supply chain, not only are you looking at huge amounts of data, because that's just what they sort through, it's often extremely manual, and the questions can be never ending. It's great because they are subject matter experts. They also get to hear about all the great things happening in the supply chain and some of the not great things. Over the last 5 years, we've had, as we all know, an incredible amount of disruption in supply chain, driving a lot of manual intervention from the sea of planners that we have around the world. It is a balancing act, but there's ways for us to be able to look at things, automate, use generative AI, use different ways to look at it. So those planners can spend a little less time digging deep into multitudes of spreadsheets, making multiple phone calls, and focusing on things that are more value-add and more interesting to them, and preventing me from having to go 2 hours each way to a pharmacy that has the in-stock. So this is just the beginning of what we're starting to think about. When we think about things, innovation here at AWS is really the heart of our values. You may hear at AWS that we talk about every day is day one. So if we started today, how would we address these problems? How would we look at them? It's the tip of the iceberg, but it's really where things get interesting. As you sit here, I'd like you to think about if you could automate a manual process today, any manual process, what would you want to automate? What kind of time savings and what other things, if that process wasn't there, could you and your teams work on? What other problems could be solved with that? Our journey begins with Amazon Q for supply chain. It's an interactive, generative AI engine. The idea is to be able to proactively identify issues. It's also going to be ways for us to look at what types of things are people really asking? What are the endless questions and why? Because there's projects there are answers there. There's a lot more than just querying. There's a lot more that the supply chains can do to become more efficient, do more interesting things. When you can solve this, you can set your foundations. So if you were going to automate a manual process, like our .com side does often today, we will go through and we'll automate something that is majorly intensive and then allow those team members to be able to shift and work on something different and new, growing in their careers. That's where at AWS Supply Chain, we look at this as our evolution into intelligent insights. Mentioned earlier, it does begin with the journey of Amazon Q and supply chain, but it also allows us to leverage things, and it allows us to use our big words like we're going to be predictive, descriptive, prescriptive, and diagnostic. But what does that all also really mean? That means that we're going to be able to rapidly respond to make sure those vaccines are in the right place, and then allow everyone to be able to ask quick questions, find quick answers as needed, without that manual intensive drive into the endless spreadsheets or trying to figure out what just happened and what should we do. So imagine, self-learning, innovative diagnostics, different ways to look at things, and start applying it to some of the known and unknown challenges in supply chain. An engineering change, intentionally or unintentionally, can cause a massive amount of manual intervention across every supply chain. That could be something from a change for a major clothing retailer in the black that they're using for the dye that actually creates multiple levels of complexity through their supply chain. It could be at an automotive where they're looking to change the makeup of something in the oil filter, which has been around for years. There's also a lot of information and a lot of learning that happens just in the basic things that we're used to hearing about, like our demand volatility, like dependency risks. If the Oreo cookie is not in stock, what happens to your milk sales? What's going on there? There's a lot of automation and excitement ahead and with us today. So if you could automate a manually intensive process, what problems could you solve that you don't have time to focus on today? That's the real question and value of the day. So in summary, as we start to look at the future and where this is going, not only does it save me, because I can say, hey, Dad, we've solved it. Remember the conversation we had, and then I'm sure he'll remind me in depth how long of a car ride it is for 2 hours for him as a passenger. But we can also look at it and say, wow, here's a way for us to reduce the risk and the cost in the supply chain, which can go to the end consumer, which can help resolving our issues. It can help us looking at it and saying, here's where we're going next. So as we start to wrap up today, the action that we would ask you to take is go ahead and take a look. If you'd like to scan one of the QR codes, feel free to connect with us at any time if you have questions or want to play with the technology of AWS supply chain. Because as we're working things to make faster, better, and more informed decisions about the supply chain, it can also enable teams around the world to automate that manually intensive process, start working on things that are more value-add and interesting. Thank you, everyone.